Welcome to the Slash Tax Podcast, where we share strategies to cut your tax bill legally, unlock incentives, and invest smarter to build lasting wealth. Today's guest is an amazing industry veteran and one of the most respected voices in self-storage. This is Marc Goodin, the CEO of Storage Authority Franchise, the only brick-and-mortar self-storage franchise in the U.S., helping busy professionals build significant income streams and long-term wealth without having to reinvent the wheel. With more than 40 years of experience as a civil engineer, a developer, and a self-storage owner, Marc has been involved in every stage of the process, from finding land, design, and permitting to construction, operations, and marketing. He's built and operated multiple facilities himself, authored 2 best-selling books on self-storage development and marketing, and he speaks at national industry events. Through Storage Authority Franchise, Marc has created a proven system that helps investors fast-track their success in self-storage, covering development, operations, sales, and marketing, all while avoiding the costly mistakes that can typically take years to learn. In this episode, we're diving into the tax benefits of investing in self-storage, what Marc is seeing in the market now that the One Big Beautiful Bill has passed, and where he thinks the industry is headed. If you've been curious about adding self-storage to your portfolio, this will be a really great episode for you. So let's get started. Well, with that, Marc, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being a guest on the podcast today. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you.
Thanks for inviting me. I'm excited as well. It's a great introduction to self-storage for some of your listeners.
Yes, absolutely. So I gave a brief introduction about what you're doing and what you guys are doing with Storage Authority with the franchise side, which is really unique. You guys have a really cool business, and you and I met, I don't even know how many years ago now. It kind of blows me away, but it's probably been like 7 or 8 years plus that we connected for the first time in what you are doing and really helping people get into self-storage. And I was fascinated by that at the time. I've made a couple introductions to you. And it's funny, as I think about the idea of getting into my own property, I'm in some syndicated funds and I have other real estate, but I don't have my own personal private self-storage property. And, I've actually had those conversations with you about working with you guys to help into that process, especially for a first project. So anyway, that's kind of the background of how you and I have been connected and why I wanted to have you on here as really a trusted expert in this space. So with that, let's dive in and talk about your background in self-storage and then how you got started in the industry and why a franchise. So let's start there.
Awesome. Back when I was a young engineer, back in, I think it was in the early 80s, a gentleman came to our office and, asked if I design a self-storage for him. And I said, of course I will. But you're going to have to explain to me what a self-storage is. Back in the early 80s, it just wasn't a common business. So he took me for a tour for one of his facilities. It was concrete block. You could actually see the block, wood roofs, and, quite different than it is today. And I designed a couple for him. And before you know it, I was designing them for a lot of people throughout the state of Connecticut. And then, eventually nationwide, people were starting to call me from that work as my civil engineering business. And I noticed after a while, the only guys that were not going back to the office after they came and reviewed a project with me was the self-storage guys. They didn't go back to work. Self-storage was the work, and it took a lot less time than the 9-to-5 jobs. So at one point, I said, I can do this for myself. I've done it for so many other people. I built a first self-storage, and then I built a second self-storage, one right after another. Actually, back in the recession of 2006 to 2008 is when I built the toughest times ever. Interest rates 8%. People thought I was crazy.
Yep.
And then it was only a few years later, I was age 50, and I retired from my engineering career because I was making double and triple from my self-storage business, working a quarter of the time.
Wow.
So I flat out retired. I enjoyed life for 5 years. And my wife says, I'm not going fishing with you anymore, Marc. You better find something to do. And at that same time, a gentleman called me and said, Mark, I took all these classes, I read all these books.
Yes.
I want to build self storage, but I still can't figure out how to do that development portion of it. Operations sounds like I can fumble through that, sales and mark, but I can't figure out how to build it. No matter how hard I try, will you help me with that? And I said, sure, and I just charge you by the hour. And, after a couple of months, he said, you're probably giving the same answers to everybody that's building self-storage. And it seems like there are some rules and regulations and guides that everybody needs to know. This would be perfect for a franchise.
Mm.
And his name was Scott House. And it just so happens that he was a franchise expert in the hotel world.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And once upon a time, he was a top salesman when he was in that business. And he said, Mark, let's start a franchise together. And I said, "Oh, okay. My wife just told me I better find something to do." It took us a year. There's a lot of manuals, a lot of books, a lot of franchise documents you got to put together. And sure enough, we put it together and we opened up. It was like we opened up in November and we signed somebody in November, December, and in January, I told Scott, all right, you take care of the franchise section in a matter of speaking, and I'll take care of the engineering, the design, the development, all those landmines. And he says, Mark, I can't do that full time. I gotta I gotta have a job and pay my bills. I don't own a self storage like you.
He's like, I'm not retired and fishing all the time.
Yeah, So I said, what's the plan, Scott? What is the plan then? And he says, he thought about it for a day or two and he came back. I'll tell you what, I'm going to give you my 50% of the business, and he put some money in too to lawyers and everything. And you're going to help me build my first self-storage, my original goal. So sure enough, that's exactly what we did. He became one of the second or third franchises that, was signed in and actually built. He built one in Florida. It cost him about $5.5 million to build it. And,
Hmm.
and he sold it 2 years after he built it for $13 million.
Wow.
I
That's
still talk to him
amazing.
every once in a while, and he just thanks me. He says, Mark, you just can't, my life is different. I don't have to go to work. I do some real estate dabbling with friends and everything, but thanks to you and self-storage, I don't have to. And so that's how it's evolved. It was just pure luck. The idea came together. It was an idea as time has come. I mean, you can go out there and get a management company to run your facility. Not the same if you run it. You're going to pay more attention. You're going to do sales and marketing, which 80, 90% of the self-storages do no sales, no marketing. You're going to have a manager in there that's a best common denominator versus the least common denominator like the REITs might have.
Wow.
So, you're going to do a better job and you're going to make double the profits if you do it on your own with a team of franchise like ourselves. We help them find the architect, the engineer, all the things they need to do. We've got to set up for them step by step.
So how many projects have you been involved with now? Here it is, 2025. I mean, what's kind of the tally, notches in your belt?
Well, there's different kinds of notches in that belt. I've literally helped thousands of people with many problems, many projects. People get in trouble all the time and end up with this, $500,000 minefield. I've had people buy a piece of property and then come to find out, this zoning regulation won't allow it. And so, I looked at that. I understand planning and zoning because that's what I did for 40 years. And so that's literally hundreds and hundreds, over 1,000 that I've helped. Now that I've helped from A to Z, it's closer to 30. I've created 30 multi millionaires, helping them from A to Z.
Wow, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah,
So So talk a little bit about like the area or regions. I mean, have you been relatively regional specific or like area demographically specific, or are you working all over? Because that's one thing that I struggle with is like knowing where is the right area to build or develop a project and, knowing the intricacies of that particular market. How are you handling that and what are you dealing with in terms of the clients you're working with?
Yeah, and that's a great insight and a huge problem. First, we have to understand the best area is not a state or a region. The best area is a 3 mile radius. Everything we do in 3 mile in self storage is based off the 3 mile population. How much competition is in that 3 miles? What are the other guys charging in that 3 miles? So we're throughout the United States because most franchisees, oh, I'll build anywhere. No, if you're an attorney, you don't want your attorney's office to be 6 hours away.
Hmm.
You want it to be within an hour of your house. So most of the times we pre-qualify franchisees by them themselves, but we also look at their area. One side of town can be great, and because there's only one or two self storage. The other side can have 8 self storages, and it's over, and the population's less, and it can be terrible.
Hmm.
We have to do that research into the 3 mile radiuses. In general, the best place for self storage is in the Sun Belts, both coasts, and then Texas and Arizona. It's simply, and that reason is because you can rent a unit for more money.
Hmm.
In Montana, it rents for less. It might cost less, but it doesn't cost that much less because, like when you order steel, wherever you order steel and deliver it in the United States, it's very similar in price. So you
Hmm.
might have some hourly rates that are less, but in general, we're trying to help people find locations that, have higher rental rates. But
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So I'm guessing you've got a process for identifying markets or areas, or is it more like if you have an investor who's interested in developing a project, are you allowing them to say, hey, I'm interested in developing something in this area. Can you help me see if or where in this locale is the best spot? Is that what you guys are is that part of, I guess, what you're doing with the franchise?
one of the most important parts we do is help the franchisees find land, because they have little experience in that. And the second part is go through the development because not everybody has major development experiences. So we help them find the land. We have all kinds of calculators, all kinds of apps that we can use. We can go anywhere in the United States, and I can instantly tell what the population is in the 3, 4, 5 mile, whatever I choose. I can tell how many square feet of self storage there is, how many self storage is coming in the pipeline, what the rental rates are, what the population growth are. There's a lot of information that's out there, but we have to interpret it and make sure if a location is excellent.
Yeah,
You
that
know,
that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So let's segue into why self-storage. And I have my ideas. I've got some background just because we've really been supporting a lot of self-storage owners over the years. And when we look at the tax implications or benefits of this sector, it's pretty compelling. But before we even get there, I would love your take and for you to share with listeners, why do you think self-storage is such an ideal asset class over other property types, right? We've got lots of investors looking at hotels or multifamily projects or office or, whatever it may be. Why self-storage?
well, it comes down to the basics. First of all, self storage is the most profitable real estate business. Year after year after year, last 20 years. It costs less to build in a hotel and rents more per square foot. And the
Hmm.
same thing for multifamily housing, and the same thing for retail. So it's very profitable. You know, I think in the last couple of years we might have gotten beat out by these Walmart Walmart 50 million dollar warehouses, and now sometimes we're getting beat out by some of these $100 million information warehouses. But
Hmm.
most people don't. aren't ready to invest into a 100 or 200 or $1 billion project. So, in my mind, it's still the number one best value for your money and most profitable. Has the least amount of failure rate. You go to any bank and list all the real estate, and self-storage is going to be right down here at the bottom. And it's like, minimal, less than 3%, which is really incredibly low. But
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, I don't think any self-storage is going to truly fail where you lose money. If you did everything wrong, all you're going to lose is maybe all that time you put in it, because you put it up for sale. It's sold in 30 days, 60 days max. Uh,
Wow.
so, and people do sell it because, in the beginning, they didn't have enough cash for that time frame to rent it up.
Hmm.
It can take a year to rent up that self-storage, and you start empty, but you got to pay your employees and your bank. So some people don't even think about that. To me, it's obviously you need to think about your carrying cost to break even. We put
Hmm.
that in the loan. We have it as a line item, so everybody's aware of that when we do our feasibility study, when we do our
Wow.
profit loss.
Yeah, amazing. Well, speaking of that, you say or you describe your system as the secret sauce for success. What are the three core platforms that set Storage Authority apart? That's something you guys are really touting.
Well, first of all, it's our development platform. If you go out and buy a self-storage right now, it's got a cap rate of around 5. That means you're going to
Hmm.
make about 5% profit if everything goes right. And that's if you pay cash for it. Because if you bought it with a 5% cap rate and the bank loan is 7%, you're going to lose 2% a year. Now,
Yep.
the REITs can do that. The big players can lose money because they know every year they can raise their rents 2 to 3% more than inflation. So they can afford to, because they know their profits are going to go up 2 to 3%. So it could be 0 this year, 3, 5, 7, 9, 10. You know, so our development platform, you can instantly make millions by building it, by finding the land, building it, and going through the development process. I'm a civil engineer for 40 years. I designed, like I said, over hundreds of self storages as an engineer. So, and not only that, I've done over thousands of Walmarts and Dunkin' Donuts. You name it. I've done it. So I know the dangers of development. I
Hmm.
know the landmines. There's not a franchisee out there that's gone through the development process. We didn't save them $300,000 in mistakes that they would have made without us.
Yeah,
Um,
that makes sense. Well, yeah, I mean that's the biggest risk I think with it's one thing to potentially buy a project, like to dive into self-storage as an investor who's not familiar with the space and really is not in that uh I guess in the sphere or that world of self-storage, um, which is quite large. We do you and I both do some of the big annual conferences and it's pretty significant. But to think or consider building or developing your own project is such a huge undertaking. But I personally have seen such huge success rates, like the example you shared, of people who have built these projects and then sold them for a really significant amount of money and profit, with the upside, just not to mention their profits and cash flow that's generating from the asset. So it's really striking to see how the industry continues to grow and expand, and the benefits of the particular sector. All of that aside from the tax side, which is like I think icing on the cake. And again, I wanted to have you on this show specifically because I deal with investors constantly saying, that will have done cost segregation on a project, seen the benefits of it. And the next question is, hey, I need to buy something else this year or next year. I'm planning for how I want to build my tax strategy and my portfolio. What are the best asset classes or property types that I should consider? And there are a few of them. I always say there's gas stations, there are car washes, which we're seeing everywhere, and self-storage. And self-storage is one of the most highly performing assets when we consider depreciation, and with the one big beautiful build bonus depreciation, because of how some of those buildings are treated. Now, caveat is it depends on the type of building, the type of property, but How have you seen, or what do you see as the biggest tax advantages of investing in self storage and how that correlates to the investment?
Yeah, self storage. You know, just like you talked about the initial savings in year one, two, and three. People don't realize, you didn't make a lot of money in years one and two. You can take that depreciation, which is considered an expense against income, and apply that towards your regular business income or your regular W-2 income. So that's incredible. You just got to have a mindset. Okay, I'm taking that savings and I'm using that or part of that if I didn't borrow it from the bank to get me to break even point. So that's a good point. Um, you know, self storage makes more money than some of these other businesses because um, their assets are fixed. They only have two employees. If you own a Dunkin' Donuts or even a car wash, you've got multiple employees. Every year their price goes up. When you have a lot of employees, a restaurant, it's just horrible. But we only have one or two. Our building and our land, that price is fixed. I bought those back in 2008 prices. Okay, it's fixed there, and it's never going to change unless I borrow against it. It's never going to change. So my profits, everybody's income usually goes up in business every year, but their profits don't necessarily go up.
Yeah.
Sometimes their income goes up a lot and they still making less money because their expenses went up. Here, it's just the opposite. We make more profits every single year because our assets are fixed. I like to say, build, borrow, and die. You know, if you build it and sell it, that's a business. It's not an investment. But if you build it and then you borrow money from it, and it's still being paid back by the corporation, that's
Hmm.
tax-free money.
Yep.
Tax-free money.
Absolutely. Yep.
So, I I renew my self-storage loan every 5 to 10 years. Every time I do that, I take out hundreds of thousands, if not a million or two,
Hmm.
cash. And that helped me build my second one, helped me build my third one.
Yep. Right. Yeah. Because I mean, you could sell for a large gain, or like you're saying, pull some of that equity out, roll that into the next project, and it just continues to grow and snowball from there. Especially again, having that all be tax-free income in essence because of the tremendous benefits of the deductions and depreciation that comes from it. What's your read on the market right now? And I'll preface that question with the fact that I have a lot of investors specifically looking for tax deductions and offsetting or sheltering really high income amounts or high income earners. And so self storage has become a category that is highly sought after. There seems to be a pretty dramatic demand for these projects. Um, I don't deal with a lot of developers. Most are people that are looking to acquire a building as quickly as possible and use the deductions. So, given that, I mean, I have a little bit of a jaded perspective because I'm dealing with investors specifically looking at it from that perspective. You're more on the development side with people really building portfolios and really diving into real estate investing. But what are you seeing for the industry, for the market, and where do you foresee that going?
Well, I think over the next few years, we are going to see another peak in the self storage market. And like I said, I've been doing this a long time. I've gone through three. I can remember, I think it was 79 when we got 21% interest on our money market accounts.
Wow.
I was really young then, but I think, you know, we have some tough times going on right now, but I think it's the tail end of those tough times. And the people that get in now are going to be super excited they did and they didn't wait. Like I said, when I built in the Great Depression, whatever it was, 2008, 8% interest rates. That's just was horrible. But
Hmm.
I was there, and you're able to refinance out. You can refinance out. So if you can make a profit at today's interest rates of 6 or 7 or 8, depending on the bank that you use or however you do it, you'll be ahead of everybody else because you'll be organized. You'll understand marketing and sales. You have your team there. So when it switches, you're not going to be going out and looking and starting from scratch. When that interest rate, if that interest rates comes down 0.5% next week,
Hmm.
that's going to be a sign for everybody to get back in the market. Cap
Yep.
rates are going to go back from 5% to 4%.
Mm.
You know, the cost of land is going to go up higher. Everything is going to become more expensive when interest rates come down. So you have an opportunity right now. Right now, as interest rates for the people that you're talking about, interest rates are high. It is actually the best time to buy because what's happening is there's a bunch of people out there every year, a bunch of people that have right now, people that have 4 and 5% interest rates. This year, a whole pile will come due to refinance at
Yeah.
8% or 7 next year. So the next 3 or 4 years, because like I said, most people have a 5 to 10 year term. Very unlikely you have a term longer than 10 years unless you get one of those SBA loans. Or you have to. It's not like a home mortgage for 30 years. So we have a lot of people coming up to refinance that have to refinance. Their term is up and they don't they're older people, a lot of them in their 60s, ready to retire. So the combination, they're going to want to sell right now.
Yeah.
So once the rates come down, it's everything's going to cost more. So get that fixed asset. Inflation, bad news, is good if you own a self-storage.
Yeah,
you know
it's a great perspective. I mean, where do you see the biggest opportunities in the next like 3 to 5 years? Like in a particular area, in a particular region? What do you think is going to provide the biggest opportunity?
Well, I think the biggest opportunity, no matter what you can make mistakes in businesses, but one opportunity that always cures it in self-storages is areas where people are moving to. Okay. If I'm going to build and I do everything great or I do everything poorly, I'd rather build in an area where the population's increasing 1 or 2 or 3% a year versus California that's losing 1% versus, Connecticut that's losing or breaking even. I'd rather be in a state with no income tax than a state, I built my first 2 self-storages in Connecticut and I have to give them 5% of my profits. Because
Well, that's why
Florida,
I'm
no,
that's why
nothing. Give nothing to Florida. Florida gives me money
yeah.
practically.
Yep,
So,
yep,
you know,
exactly. Well,
you
that's
know,
why I ended up moving to Las Vegas, and it's unbelievable, just the tax difference. It's compelling. And yes, you're starting to see the migrations. That's a great point.
yeah, in Las Vegas, don't ask me why, but some areas just use more self-storage than others.
Mm,
One state might have New York's got like 2 or 3 square feet of self-storage per person.
hmm
Las Vegas, I'm making the number up. I don't have it, but it's triple or double or triple that amount. You can build a self storage on 3 corners in Las Vegas, and likely you can build another one on the fourth corner. Well, that's not going to be the case in Connecticut.
Yeah, yeah,
People
that makes
use
sense.
use self storage more. I'm certain the businesses use self storage more because down on the main boulevards there, that land goes for millions of dollars a square feet. So they need self storage just outside of town where it's half price.
Yeah, yeah. What are some of the most common mistakes that an investor would make, and how can they avoid those if they're looking at or interested in either building or buying a facility?
Well, if they're buying a facility, what you typically get is a whole host of documents from the seller and his agent. And the biggest mistake is believing those documents. It says 90% rented. It says these are my rental rates. Well, you've got to go to the facility. If they've got 100 units rented, you should be able to count 100 locks. That they're there. If they say they're renting at $100, you should be for a 10 by 10. You should be a call up, and if you say, $100 sounds cheap. Well, what are you looking for? I'd like to get 80, and they sell it to you for 80.
Mm,
There's something wrong there with it. So you really got to check that information. And when they're selling self storage, not only do they sell it at a low cap rate, but they sell it based upon next year's income. So the agent will say, when you start selling boxes and boxes, when you start selling insurance, when you raise the rents to what everybody else is charging, your cap rate, and your profits will go up. If it was so easy, why should I pay on next year's income if these guys didn't do it? but they're getting.
Well, yeah, and I've already seen, well, the income opportunity at 100% capacity is, or 100% occupancy is X amount. Here's the revenue potential, and you're like, okay, but that's not what it is. The appraisal could be based on actual income, and you're only 80% occupied. So there's a pretty big segue. I've seen some agents actually value properties at the list price based on 100% occupancy and what revenue would be based on that, but yet it's not at full occupancy. So that's another one I've seen.
Right. And full occupancy and self-storage is 90% full, by the way. That's what we consider full. If you're at 100% full, your rates are too low.
Mm.
So if I catch one of my franchisees at 94% rented, we have a call. What's going on here? You're losing money. Let's bring the rates back down to 90% full. And we don't do it on a whole facility. We do it on size by size by size. So there's some math to it. So
Interesting. Yeah.
yep. And you had pointed out, what's some of the minefields of buying a self-storage. When you buy a self-storage, make sure you're thinking of it and your attorney's thinking of it. You buy everything. You get the name, the UTC filing, you get the website, you get the phone number, you get all that stuff because your customers are used to that stuff. So there's a lot of different things, and you might not want to do it, but you should pay a third-party feasibility expert to go out there and evaluate it. We do that. We do that with land, but they should tell you, hey, this guy, his rates are the highest. Don't think. A lot of people go out and buy self-storage thinking they can raise the rents.
Yeah.
Well, the feasibility guy will tell you if he thinks that's true or not.
Okay. Yeah, that's good advice. As far as how you are helping investors specifically, are you working on, I'm really curious, like primarily ground up developments from, literally dirt to completed facilities? Are you working on some of these big box conversions? We're also seeing a lot of these big industrial properties, or the big box stores that are going out of business, retail converted into interior self-storage, or even buying existing self-storage and doing expansions or renovations. Are you doing all of that, none of that, one of those things? What's your primary focus?
We do all three of those. Okay.
Okay.
Now the primary, usually when we have a franchisee, they have a primary focus for one reason or another, to meet their timeframes. Like conversions of a big box store, it doesn't save you a ton of money,
Hmm.
but it saves you a ton of time. Usually that box is located in an area of good traffic. Usually it's located in an area of easy access, high population. So that it, unless there's too much self-storage, and it's easier approvals, and obviously it's faster to build because you just have to do the interior petitions. Another place that works extremely well is an area with super high land costs,
Oh,
because
yeah.
when the land is super high, they don't get the full value of that box on top of it. Okay, so overall it can be cheaper to way cheaper if the land costs are high.
Mm.
And when you think of big box, don't just think of big boxes. We've got one going on right now in Detroit, Michigan. It's an old furniture warehouse.
Oh,
So,
interesting.
furniture warehouses, some of these smaller grocery stores that are, 40,000, say you want to build 80,000 square foot building, about
Hmm.
60,000 net rentable. You build a grocery store at 30 or 40,000, has a huge parking lot. They've got 200 cars. We only need 6 spaces. So we can convert that parking lot into phase 2. You can open
Oh, wow.
quick. So don't always think of, I got to buy an old Walmart or Kmart.
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting.
So
Okay. So quite a few options. And that makes sense because I am located in an area where land costs are really, really high. Part of the landlocked issue is affecting Southern Nevada. Um, so talk a little bit about how you work with investors. So your franchise, your team, like if I come to you and I say, okay, Mark, I'm really interested in getting into self-storage. I don't know where to start. Where do we start? What does it look like? And walk me through that process.
yeah, so first we have introductory sessions where we've got a set of manuals. You know two manuals you don't need it for a while is operations and sales and marketing, but we give those to you. So we have 5 sessions with you where we go over those manuals, and basically concentrating on the development manual. But after that, the manuals are there when you want to do some reading, but after that, it's one-on-one. We like to meet every week on a Zoom call, because that way, you just can't read a book and know how to do it, and not only that, not everything can be put in the book because there's so many variations that you'll miss.
Mm-hmm.
So we are with them every step they take, meet with them once weekly. They call us anytime they want. And there's some people that say, I just want to meet once a month while I'm looking.
Mm.
It takes them twice as long to find the land. We just know it. They meet with us weekly. They follow the steps. They know they have to report. And not only that, they can tell us a story and we can tweak it and tell them another story. My favorite stories over and over again is, I'll give you an example. We have a facility in Houston. Ed saw a gas station and it had a lot of land behind it. And he went to the guy at the gas station. Hey, you want to sell me the 5 acres behind your gas station right next to it? It was on the 4 corners. The guy said, no, nope. Ed stopped in every month for 6 months and asked him. On the 6th month, he said yes.
Wow.
But half of our self-storage is found that way on the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th request. Are you sure you don't want to buy it? The more they thought about it, here's $1 million. It's going to pay me $1 million for that piece of property. I thought it was worth 500,000. And eventually, so we don't find our land online. We find 80% offline.
Oh, wow.
But people think they hire a real estate agent and they're going to have a self-storage tomorrow. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah. Okay. So you are partnering with an investor and coaching that investor on essentially how to hit the pavement and do the work.
Yes, but we have a list of contractors. We have a list of architects. Even you use your own architect, we're going to give them a list of our standards that they're going to forget. The same as a civil engineer. Civil engineers are local. They're always a local guy. But we give them a list of, a couple dozen sheets of, don't forget this. They were going to get about 60%, but they were going to forget, the kiosks that we need and the keypads and this and that. So it's all on there. So first shot, they can get it. I'm a civil engineer. I review the plans when they're done. And it's kind of comical. Everybody misses something that's so basic. You go out there in the world now, it's hard to find good help.
Yes. Yeah. Right. Well, and self-storage is really, really specific. I mean, it's like it's its own beast. It's not like other asset classes. So I think having the expertise and someone with the background in the industry is so vital because yeah, I don't think you can even just go find any architect. I think it's got to be very specific for this industry.
Same with the contractors. If you haven't built 10 or 15 self-storages, you haven't gone through the learning cycle yet. If you haven't designed 10 or 15 self-storage in the last 2 years, you don't know all the pitfalls.
Yeah, right. Okay, so you are working with investors. So then let's say that investor finds property, and let's use that example. You've got this guy that found a 5-acre parcel behind a gas station, convinced the guy 6 months later to actually sell him this piece of land. Where do things progress from there? You connect him, you've got a list of architects, engineers. How do you work with that investor through the process of then getting it permitted and getting to the stage of being able to actually build, which I'm guessing could also be a lengthy process.
Right. Even before they find the land, we help them build their team. So, they're looking in Houston, we help them find a civil engineer and an architect and a contractor because all 3 of them have input onto, looking at that piece of land. The contractor can tell us, it's like this, we have to cut 50,000 cubic yards. How much is that going to cost extra if the land has to be filled or cut? So by having the team together, we get a faster start. And too many people think I just go to my civil engineer and let him design it. But he doesn't know that a self-storage building shouldn't be 67 feet long. Self-storage buildings come in 10-foot increments. The civil engineer won't even know that. 67 feet fits in there. I'll make it, 267 feet when it should be 270 or 260. So you need a team day one. So we put the team together with them day one, and we set up those same regular calls. It's amazing how the civil engineer will do his own thing, and then the architect will do his own thing. The doors don't match. The handicap doesn't match. There's no place for the air conditioning units. Nobody, or they're shown on the architect does that, but the building's 2 feet off the property line. There's no room to put them behind the building. So we get the team to work together early on, and we go through that process.
Okay. So then they find the land. You've got a team. You do the design, get permits, and it's time to break ground. Now what? This is the scary part, I think. You got your financing. You start building. How are you guys involved in all that?
Yeah. Well, before they break ground, you sign a contract and everything, and you got a set of plans. We go so far as, okay, part of your contract is, here's a list from Storage Authority. It might be in the plans, it might not be in the plans, but people, even if it's on the plans, they miss it. They'll argue, self-storage guys, I'm not going to do your signage. That's not part of, your sign out there. We don't do that. We don't do your access control systems or your cameras. They're known for saying that's not part of the deal, but not saying it until they got the job.
Yep.
So we put together a contract addendum that lists. So it's black and white. They cannot say. Some of the things are on the plans, but if the civil engineer will say, "Hey, here's a gate." He won't say how big the opening is, the brand, that it's got battery backup. What if you don't have a battery backup and the power's out? Somebody's locked inside your self-storage? That's exactly what you will get if your architect, engineer, and contractor don't work together. But if it got missed, our addendum will put it on there. And that's from my experience and our team's experience, what happened. And then it goes to construction. We are still there. We actually break from different staff members, but I'm all the way through construction. Halfway through construction, it gets another storage authority person, pre-opening preparations.
Oh, cool.
Because there's a lot to do. You got to order supplies, you got to get insurance, you got to get signage, and it's massive. So you get a person that's an expert in sales, marketing, and operations.
Nice.
And you always have a backup person. Mark's on vacation. Well, you got Garrett's phone number, and if Garrett can't answer it, Garrett can call me on vacation. He knows I'm going to answer my phone. There can be emergencies. You have a change order in construction, and it takes you 2 weeks to get it worked out. Well, it takes 4 weeks of lost time. Whatever it takes to do a change order, it's double in lost time to the completion date.
Wow.
And every month you don't open, you lose about $55,000 in income by opening.
Wow, that's a big number. That's compelling.
And the reason it's so big is because people stay for a year. So it's amazing, and so we're there, and it's actually a good thing for the contractor. We don't tell the contractor what to do, but we'll meet with the contractor and owner, and we'll give an answer immediately.
Okay.
Sometimes they have to call their engineer. It's a week before you can get it figured out. No, just this is common sense. Do this. Everybody agrees. It's done. We didn't spend 2 weeks figuring something out.
Right. So you go through that process. I mean, given that you're a franchise, are you then branding the whole facility as a storage authority property?
Yes, it's a storage authority with a identifier under. We have a facility opening later this week or next week. It's Storage Authority Buck Road.
Okay.
So usually it's Storage Authority and some, airport,
Got it.
SRQ airport or something. So it's identifier that helps people understand where it's located.
Okay. And so then how are you structuring that financially? Obviously, there's a cost to having you guys involved in doing the franchise. Can you explain the financial piece of working with you guys?
Yes. And to get the full financial data and all the other data you get from us is something that's called the franchise disclosure document, which has the franchise agreement in there with all the math, all of your responsibilities and my responsibility. And I'm saying that because I'm going to tell you a portion of it, but you can't base anything on a portion of it. You've
Yeah.
got to go look at it. The same on our website, storageauthorityfranchise.com, is FAQs that goes over all the common questions like how much is your royalty fees. So it works this way. There's a one-time franchise fee.
Okay.
And that covers you from the day you start all the way through that development and it all the way through pre-opening preparations, training your manager, and then assisting you ongoing forever.
Mm.
But it's a one-time fee, and that is $69,000. Industry-wide, that is relatively cheap because the hotel guys or McDonald's, they'll charge you the same, but they don't guide you through construction.
Mm-hmm.
Long before you open, we've spent that money twice. We just have,
Yeah.
because it's so important. We tried to let developers do it on their own, and it was too hard for them.
Yeah.
So we only want successful developers, of course.
Yeah.
So that's a one-time fee. Once you open, there's two more fees. One is a marketing technology fee,
Mm-hmm.
and we're different than say McDonald's. They use it all on advertising. We use
Mm-hmm.
that money towards your store on things that would just be a lot of work for you to do compared to us. We do your website for you. If you did it, it wouldn't be SEO compliance. It wouldn't be updated monthly. It wouldn't be correct. We provide your text module. So we can set it up automatically. If somebody's late, they get a text 5 days, 7 days. So a lot of it is we buy and operate for you, things that would just you'd be pulling your hair out.
Okay. Well, that makes a lot of sense because, like, just for example, I deal with a lot of the marketing here at ETS. Just the texting module as a standalone small business, that can actually be very expensive to get numbers to be able to text clients and do some of that stuff. So I'm sure if you're able to roll that into your franchise where you're more grouped into a network, then really the cost of doing of those things is so much better for everybody. So that's a really nice service to have.
Yeah, and it's they don't have to go out and research which text do I use. I can tell you what, we've been in the history. We've been through 4 different ones, but
Hmm.
each one's gotten better. Now the one we use actually allows them to pay. You get a
Nice.
text, you're late, right there on they can pay on the text. It's worth that. It's worth that because once somebody's late for 2 months, they don't want to pay up, and you got to bring them to
Yeah.
auction.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
all that technology, most self-storages spend about 10% a month of their budget on marketing. We do 2.5%, and you'll probably do another 2.5. So we cut your marketing budget way down
Hmm.
because we help set up your newsletter, we help set up your Facebook. We've got for your electronic sign, we give you 200 sayings that are perfect for it.
Nice.
When we're doing it for person after person, it's not so expensive. But if I were to do it for one person, it would cost them $500,000.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Okay. Here's a totally I think funny question, and you may kill me for asking this. Do you make any money on selling the stuff in a storage unit when someone defaults?
um, no, no. The-
I always think of like storage wars, right? You see these auctions, these people are coming in, they're like, okay, what's in the unit? What do we got?
well, I'll tell you the reality is now 90% of the people do the auctions online. It's a lot
Mm,
easier, a lot cleaner, a lot smoother, a lot time consuming. What the purpose of doing that? And here's where there is a money maker. You have to do it. There is a money maker. Say I have 5 people that are ready to go to auction.
hmm.
I could call them. They're not going to pay me. But when they get the official notice, July 18th, your units are going up for auction. They're going to be up for auction for 1 week, and they're going to be sold to the highest bidder. Out of those 5, 4 will pay me, including the $200 fee for the auction. 1 will go to auction. So we make a lot of money because A, the tenants pay up, and B, we keep the tenants.
Mm. Oh, interesting.
Yep. So what some self-storage is, because in self-storage, once they're 30 days late, you can give a 30-day notice and have an auction.
Okay.
Some, and so at that point, they might owe $400. Other people let them go 6 or 7 months when they owe $3,000.
Oh,
You have
wow.
an auction then, you sell it for $400 because nobody has $3,000 or $4,000 to pay their self-storage bill. We
Mm.
just had an auction at my wife's unit. My wife has one facility because she wanted to be in charge, and she's in charge of them all, but she really wanted to be in charge. She has one. The lady gave her a call and said, okay, okay. And my wife said, nope, nope, there's nothing we can do. And she goes, all right, I will pay you because I'm getting my paycheck on Thursday. My mortgage is due and this is due, but I'll pay you guys first. The mortgage, they
Mm.
can't kick me out. We, in self-storage, believe it or not, we get paid before they pay their mortgages.
Wow.
And it's reality
Interesting.
because
Mm.
our bill is less and they know we can kick them out immediately. Whereas mortgage, yeah, it's not a good thing to miss, but
Yeah. Interesting. Are there different rules in different states that, like I think about multifamily, right? I mean, there are different states that are considered to be landlord friendly versus tenant friendly, where it's like impossible to evict somebody. Is it pretty standard across the board in the US for states for being able to essentially auction off someone's belongings if they don't pay within a short period of time, or are some areas worse?
no, it's actually across the border pretty simple. There are a lot of different rules and regulations. Some really friendly states allow you to send an email letting them know. Sounds a little rough to me. Other states, you got to put a certified letter and you got to put it in the newspaper. Putting it in the
Jeez.
newspaper nowadays is expensive, but and especially since there are no more newspapers compared, but they haven't changed their laws yet.
Okay.
So there are different rules.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I was just curious if it's like that where we see, landlord friendly states versus others. I was curious if it's like that with self storage. But well, before we wrapped up, probably the last question I have for you is really relating to who is the ideal candidate and what makes sense for someone to reach out to you.
Well, the ideal candidate often is, first of all, you're going to be an entrepreneur, so you got to understand that, hey, I'm going to put some effort in, and some weeks I'm going to put in a lot of effort. So you got to be a person that can put in consistent effort through the development process. We like to say, it's going to take you on average 8 hours a week above and beyond your job. So you got to make a commitment and be consistent. Um, Other than that, we've founded it's business professionals. We've got we've got developers who sold their business. We've got architects. We've got engineers, attorneys, uh, dentists. We got some IT people. So usually people that make a good income, but they spend that money as well.
Hmm.
They're looking ahead for retirement. Even if it's a dentist that makes 600,000, you would think they'd have $2 or $3 million in the bank. They don't. They're just like you and I. So they've done well at something and they want to do something on the side, and it's hard to make a good income on the side. So they think self-storage. It does take some money and it does take some energy. If you want to build a large self-storage, I'm saying 80,000 square feet, that can cost you $1.5 million of your own cash combined with $7 million bank loan, let's say.
Okay.
So it's a big business. Don't let it, it's,
Hmm.
$39 billion and growing. But where else, you know, when you're ready to retire, can you sell it for $10 million profit 7 years from now? That's a lot of profit in 7 years.
Yeah.
Or don't sell it. What's the point? I mean, I get a check from each one of my self storages every month. Um, I haven't, other than my one that's close to us here, two of them in Connecticut, which we no longer live there. I haven't been to them in 4 years. I pay another family member $1,000 a month to go check on it. So it can be a residual income with minimal work. Once you learn the business. So
Interesting. Okay. Yeah.
it takes time to learn it, but once you learn it, you can read a few reports, you can have a conversation, you can get an end of day email, and you can spend an hour a week and run your self-storage business.
It's interesting.
Um,
Okay. Well, that's good. I mean, those are good parameters. So to sum it up, I mean, are you saying that kind of an average property right now is going to be somewhere between maybe 7 to 10 million if we're looking at a new development, and that really someone's going to need to have probably $1 to $2 million in cash to be able to put into that for equity?
yeah, that's a long big overview. If they own the land, we count the cost of the land of their equity, money, any loan they have on it. Uh, you can build these things in phases. Instead of building it all at once, you can build
Hmm.
half at a time. So it costs less money. But when you build half at a time, you still have to pay overhead of the manager. You still have to pay overhead of that one kiosk, the sign out front. So when you build it in two phases, and I did this in both my facilities because I didn't have any money at the time, um, you don't make much money at the end of phase one. You make 100 grand at the end of phase one. It's not going to make you wealthy, you know. But when you build phase two, it costs less to build because the pavement, the infrastructure, the office costs less to build per square foot. And you know what you're doing. It's going to be more profitable. So you can do it with less than those, but it takes a longer time because you have to start all over again. When phase one's about 70% full, you want to start phase
Yeah.
two.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Yes.
All right. Well, Mark, this has been amazing. I mean, I could sit here and just, continue to ask questions for an hour. I know you said you've got an FAQ sheet as well, which, if listeners want to gather that, we can probably even direct them to that or direct them to you. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
The best way is simply my email, and it's just my first name at storageauthority.com. So it's Mark, M-A-R-C, get the C there, Mark at storageauthority.com. Send me an email. We can have a call after that. I can, some people want to do some reading on their own. I can send them the books. I can send them the information. I can send them to certain places so they can get to the next step before they're ready to talk business. So
Yeah.
we'll
Awesome.
meet them
Okay.
wherever they're at.
Perfect. Well, I have kind of walked the line with you a little bit and kind of considered this over the last couple of years. My wheels are always turning because I'm at a lot of these self-storage events and I see the opportunity. So I was really excited to have you on. And again, for listeners, depending on the type of construction, with the one big beautiful bill and bonus depreciation for mini storage type properties that are made out of metal buildings, kind of those drive-through facilities, it's really impactful because we are seeing that those projects are really considered to be equipment, which typically qualify for full bonus depreciation. And so for high income earners that are in a tax state where they're paying hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not more, every single year, these projects can generate millions of dollars of deductions as soon as they are placed in service, which, to Mark's point earlier, can actually offset some of the W 2, if not all of the W 2 ordinary income on the tax return for active investors. And so this is a really profound opportunity to build wealth, to build real estate portfolios, and to generate significant income from these projects that, again, to Mark's point, have been shown to be some of the highest producing assets of any asset class when we look at commercial real estate. So I was really excited to have you on, Mark. I love what you guys are doing. I believe in what you're doing in terms of supporting investors and really walking alongside them for people who have not been in this space. And it's a totally new concept for them. So thank you again for being a guest on the podcast. I hope our guests or our listeners enjoy it. And we will share all of your contact information in the show notes.
I appreciate it very much. It was a lot of fun. And I do want to say just to the component depreciation, and you taught me this, if it's starting to get near the end of the year, we work hard with our guys so they get that CO or temporary CO so they can get the tax deductions. If they open January 1st, they missed a whole year versus the end of December. Um,
Exactly.
and I recommend every one of our franchises talk to Heidi to learn more about all these tax advantages, because there's more than you can, put in a couple minutes here, but it's
Mhm.
incredible how much money I have not paid in tax. I mean, the only person I really tell is my wife, and she can't believe it. She goes, "That doesn't make any sense. I don't understand it." I said, "Well, how can I pay less than the guy that makes $100,000?" And it's because I've got that write off and the component depreciation. Um, when I first did my facilities, they didn't have this bonus the first year. We had to break it down in, I think, 5, 7, and 12 years.
Yep.
But even that paid off for a long time. So
Mhm.
the laws are always changing, but it seems to always be in our favor, one way or another. So get with Heidi, because that depreciation in your first year can be more than your income.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. Yep. Especially as you're phasing up that project, it's really a tool, and then it converts over into those cap rates, and the returns on those assets when you factor in all of those savings and essentially generating all of this totally tax-free income because of those deductions. So it really is. It's really, we have so many people that are like, this cannot be legal and this can't be real. Like, how is this possible? But our tax code is really built to incentivize people who are willing to take risk, because there are always risks with investing. Certainly, risks in any type of real estate or business, or entrepreneurship. I mean, that's just inherent with diving into your own investments. But I think, Mark, what you guys have built really helps investors come alongside someone who has the experience to mitigate risk and create some really significant opportunities. So, really excited. And I will be sharing this with a lot of people that I know have interest in working with you guys.
Absolutely, and we'll keep sending them your way. When it comes to the tax, I just want to say one more thing, because people just don't get it. That you can't go to your CPA. It's just, you can't go to them. It's period. It doesn't work that way. There's a whole bunch of laws, restrictions, and proof that somebody that has that certification. It takes engineers, it takes certain technicians and certain laws. So you've got to go to an expert, and Heidi is the best that we know. So.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. All right, Mark, thank you again so much. I hope you have a fantastic day. And to the listeners, we will share all of his contact information in the show notes. Okay. Well, that was a fun conversation with Mark. For listeners, if you're ready to learn more about self storage investing and the Storage Authority franchise, or how Mark's system can help you fast track success, check out the links in our show notes. You'll also find Mark's contact information and a link to his best selling books. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to the Slash Tax podcast. Leave us a review and share this with someone who's ready to invest smarter and keep more of what they earn. This is Heidi Henderson, and I'll see you next time, helping you cut your tax bill and grow your wealth with smart strategies.